Hi everyone, Allie at My Safe Place here. I've been reading the Pete Walker book, um, CPTSD, Complex Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder from Surviving to Thriving, and haven't finished it yet. But one of the things that's really stood out for me as a big deal was this idea of imposter syndrome and what that is and what that's like. And it was a revelation. It was an aha moment that I certainly didn't expect. And it suddenly delved very deep into this feeling I have of being a fraud. And I've said it before. I've said it to a few close friends. And I really believe that it stems from having had most of my needs, feelings, wants, etc. Diminished, demeaned, ignored, undervalued, to the extent that I no longer need a narcissist in my life. I do it all by myself. That's what I think the imposter syndrome is I do this. I've taken over the work where the narcissists have left off. So even though I work very hard to make sure that I don't get into relationships with people like that anymore, I try to read as much as I possibly can, learn all the red flags, learn what to look for, because I don't trust myself, because I think I am a fraud. That becomes very difficult. So I think the real learning begins now, and the real healing begins now, is to start validating myself and validating my stories. And I wonder sometimes if that validation is best served by telling stories from my past, which is not my favorite thing to do. I get very uncomfortable, even though I have what I cognitively know. Intellectually, I know I have those stories and that they're real. The Inner Critic, as Pete Walker calls it, and I'll add a link to his book in the description box, is so powerful. And I don't know if this is true for other people, but it's so powerful in me that I'm constantly chasing my own tail, trying to prove to myself, even if to no one else, that I'm not a fraud, which speaks to the fact that I must believe I'm a fraud at some level. It even goes so far as to having me sort of second guess some of the issues that have arisen since my cancer diagnosis in 1999, and what living with that has been like, and what the treatment was like. I start to even second guess that because this feeling of being a fraud runs so deep. And I recently watched a few videos on YouTube where a young woman in Australia named Belle Gibson had claimed that she had an incurable brain tumor and that she'd healed her life by using natural methods. And it was fascinating to watch her, narcopath in full glory, all the signs, telltale signs, but it also had me second guessing myself, which is bizarre because I know what I've been through, but that's how much I second guess. I started to wonder if I should post better pictures so that my scar would be more visible. I wondered if people would disbelieve me because I was still alive, and there were people out there who get a lot of sympathy and pity for having had cancer, and I really despise pity. I'm not interested in pity at all. and I've made some choices, and some of them have been really good, and I've also been very lucky. But in order to avoid appearing as though I'm a victim, I've actually failed to acknowledge the depth of the despair and the pain that's also come with having been raised in a family of origin that was very cluster B disordered, very narcissistic, very borderline. Married my first husband, who was very covert narcissistic, and then ended up with this weirdo rare cancer that no one's ever heard of, and with a very uncertain prognosis. And instead of asking myself, why me, I just did what I thought was accepting it. But I'm not sure. I think that having been raised the way I was, that I was trained, and Pete Walker says this too, I was trained to accept unfair treatment. So if anything ever bad happened to me, whether it was from narcissistic abuse or just life, like getting cancer, a lot of the time it's just life. Nobody wants that. I just, rather than accepting, I think the real word here is resignation. That I'm so used to taking this big lemon that sits above my head and making lemonade out of it, and assuming that this is just the way life is supposed to be. And coming out on 4 years into no contact with my mother and sister, coming out and coming into more of a cognitive awareness of what's happened and how deep those effects are. I'm second guessing even talking about it on my own video channel. It makes me very uncomfortable talking about some of these stories. I feel tremendous shame once again, because I feel like I'm fraudulent, because there are people who have had it way worse than I have. Horrifying childhoods and marriages and whatever, other relationships. And I feel like I've been pretty lucky in a lot of respects, only it's not really lucky to be stuck with some of the things that I've been stuck with. It's not lucky at all. But I've been trained to be so grateful for even the most minute thing that I wonder how well that actually serves my healing. If I can't really acknowledge the depth of the pain, if I can't dig down and say, this was horrifying. My childhood was kind of horrifying. Having a cancer tumor right under here in the salivary gland, and I'll put a link to the kind of cancer it was in the description box if anybody's interested at all. And having the core essence of my being changed in terms of who I was, what I looked like, how I smiled. My smile was changed because the tumor seeded along the mylohyoid and the platysmus muscles, which form your smile. And I used to have one of those toothpaste commercial smiles. Ironically, I married a dentist. My first husband was a dentist. I had great teeth. I had a great smile. You could see all my teeth when I smiled. And after this surgery, I couldn't smile at all. I still talk out of my mouth very crooked, and you can see the unevenness, the missing muscle on this side compared to this side. And when I'm speaking, I speak sort of crooked. I smile kind of crooked. And I had like, my smile was one of the things that I loved about myself. And then I had to lose that. And another thing I loved about myself as a former dancer was this very long, graceful neck. And that got scarred up. And I felt the whole time through all of this, and even to this day, that really I should just, sorry, I'm about to swear, but I should just shut the fuck up. Stop fucking complaining, because there are so many people who have it way worse than you. Stop being a crybaby. You're not allowed to be a victim. How much of that is that old training? How much of that is me not acknowledging my own story? And I'm wondering if there are limitations to the level of healing that one can actually get to until one acknowledges the pain, regardless of what other people have been through. Yes, there are so many people who've been through more horrifying things than I have, that I will never understand. But how much good does it do it for me to pretend that it's not so bad, that I'm okay, when I'm actually not? When I'm actually deeply wounded by the lack of love and support I got from my family, through some of the toughest times in my life, and how the expectation was that I should just accept it for what it is and suck it up and move on, which I've been able to do to a certain extent, but I'm hitting a wall. I'm hitting a roadblock. I'm feeling like I think I need to talk about how painful that is and how hurt I am, and for a moment really own the strength that comes from being hurt, if that makes any sense. I don't know if that helps. I may not even post this, who knows? So if you see it up, wow, I've probably taken one more step closer to owning what it is that happened. Thanks for watching. Take care.